I wiped down table 6 for the 3rd time tonight. The vinegar smell of the cleaning solution sharp in my nostrils. The clock above the kitchen door read 9:47 p.m., and the Rosewood Diner was experiencing what Kayla liked to call a ghost shift. Those rare November evenings when the usual dinner crowd simply didn't materialize. Only 4 tables occupied in a space designed for 40. "You're going to wear a hole in that laminate if you keep scrubbing," Kayla said, appearing at my elbow with a coffee pot in one hand and her phone in the other. Her blonde hair was escaping its ponytail in wispy strands that framed her face. "Seriously, Hannah, it's clean. It's been clean since the last 3 times you wiped it." I set the rag down, realizing my hands were trembling slightly. 2 years of working here, and I still couldn't sit still during slow shifts. The silence made room for thoughts I'd spent those same 2 years trying to outrun. "Sorry, just restless." "You're always restless." She poured herself a cup of the coffee that had been sitting on the burner since 6. "But tonight you're extra restless. What's going on in that head of yours?" Before I could answer, the bell above the entrance chimed. Kayla and I both turned toward the door, and the automatic greeting died in my throat. 3 men entered, and they transformed the atmosphere of the diner as completely as if they'd flipped a switch. The first 2 wore dark jackets despite the relative warmth of the evening, their eyes scanning the restaurant with a professional wariness that made my stomach clench. But it was the 3rd man who commanded attention. He stood at least 6 feet tall, perhaps a bit more, with black hair precisely styled, and a charcoal suit that fit him like it had been sewn directly onto his body. Even from across the room, I could see the sharp line of his jaw, the commanding set of his shoulders. He didn't look around with the casual curiosity of a normal customer. His dark eyes assessed the space with the kind of focus that suggested he was cataloging exits, potential threats, and every person present. "Oh no," Kayla whispered beside me, her voice suddenly tight. "Oh no, no, no." "What?" "Who is he?" "That's Lucas Valentasi." She grabbed my arm, her fingers digging in hard. "He owns half the buildings in this neighborhood, maybe more than half. You do not want to be anywhere near him, Hannah." But the hostess, Sarah, was already leading them toward my section. Of course. Of the 4 occupied tables, 3 were in Kayla's section, which meant mine was the obvious choice for a party of 3 wanting privacy. "I'll take them," Kayla said quickly. "I'll tell Sarah there was a mix-up. It's fine. They're just customers." The words came out steadier than I felt. Kayla's expression said she wanted to argue, but Sarah was already gesturing toward a corner booth, and the man, Lucas Valentasi, was settling into it with his back to the wall, his 2 companions taking positions that gave them clear views of both the entrance and the kitchen door. I picked up 3 menus and approached the table, hyper-aware of my scuffed sneakers and the coffee stain on my black apron that I'd tried and failed to wash out yesterday. Lucas Valentasi didn't glance up as I approached. He was studying his phone, his expression unreadable. "Good evening. Can I start you gentlemen with something to drink?" One of the companions ordered water. The other asked for coffee, black. Lucas still hadn't looked up from his phone. I waited, pen hovering over my order pad. The silence stretched until it became uncomfortable, then excruciating. Finally, the companion who'd ordered coffee cleared his throat softly. "Sir?" Lucas lifted his eyes from the screen, and I felt the impact of his gaze like a physical thing. His eyes were a deep brown, almost black in the diner's lighting, and they held an intensity that made me want to step back. But I held my ground, keeping my expression professionally neutral. "Scotch," he said. His voice was low, measured, with the barest hint of an accent I couldn't place. "Neat. We don't serve hard alcohol, sir. Beer and wine only." Something flickered across his face. Not quite annoyance, not quite amusement. "Water, then." I wrote it down, though I didn't need to. 3 waters, 1 coffee. "I'll be right back with those." Turning away felt like breaking eye contact with a predator. I could feel him watching me as I walked to the beverage station, my shoulders tight with awareness. Kayla intercepted me before I could pour the coffee. "Are you insane? Do you know who that is?" "You already told me." "Lucas Valentasi. He owns buildings. He owns everything, Hannah. Everything. And people don't just avoid him because he's rich." She glanced over her shoulder toward the booth, then back at me. "There are rumors." Really bad rumors about what he actually does. I filled the coffee cup, added 3 glasses of water to a tray. He's a customer, Kayla. That's all I need to know. You're impossible, she muttered. But she stepped aside to let me pass. When I returned to the booth, Lucas was speaking in low tones to one of his companions, who nodded and stood up, heading toward the restroom. I distributed the drinks, setting Lucas's water down last. As I placed it on the table, my grandmother's locket, the one I'd worn every single day for the past 2 years, chose that exact moment to slip from beneath my collar where I'd tucked it. I felt the chain catch, then release. The locket tumbled forward, and I grabbed for it instinctively, but my fingers only managed to knock it further away. It bounced once on the edge of the table and landed directly on the placemat in front of Lucas Valentasi. "I'm so sorry," I said, reaching across to retrieve it. His hand closed around it first. Not aggressively, but with absolute finality. His fingers curled around the small silver oval, and he lifted it, examining it with the same focused attention he'd given the restaurant when he first entered. "That's mine," I said, trying to keep my voice level. "Please." He didn't respond. Instead, with deliberate slowness, he opened the locket. I watched his expression change. It was subtle, a tightening around his eyes, a muscle jumping in his jaw. But on a face as controlled as his, those small shifts felt seismic. He stared at the photograph inside for what felt like an eternity, but was probably only seconds. When he finally looked up at me, something in those dark eyes had transformed into something cold and dangerous. "Where did you get this?" The question was quiet, but it cut through the ambient noise of the diner like a blade. At the other table in my section, an elderly couple looked over, frowning. At the counter, Kayla had gone very still. "It's mine," I repeated, fighting to keep my voice steady. "A friend gave it to me. Now please, I need it back. Sit down." "I'm working, I can't." "Sit down." He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The authority in those 2 words was absolute, brooking no argument. My legs folded before I'd consciously decided to obey, lowering me into the booth across from him. The vinyl was cold through my thin work pants. Lucas set the locket on the table between us, still open. The photograph inside was one I'd looked at 1,000 times. Michael, smiling at the camera, his light brown hair slightly windblown, his eyes crinkled at the corners with genuine happiness. It had been taken on one of our rare day trips to Cape Cod, back when I'd still believed that our relationship was real, that he was who he claimed to be. "How do you know my brother?" The words hit me like ice water. Brother. Michael had mentioned a brother. Mentioned him often, actually, though always vaguely. An older sibling who'd stayed in Chicago when Michael came to Boston for school. Someone important. Someone he both admired and seemed slightly afraid of. I'd never imagined I'd meet him. I'd certainly never imagined meeting him like this. "Michael," I managed. "Michael is your brother." Was. Lucas's correction was sharp. He's been dead for 2 years. So I'll ask again. How do you know him, and where did you get his photograph? Dead. The word ricocheted around my skull. 2 years. That was exactly when Michael had disappeared, when he'd stopped answering my calls and texts, when I'd shown up at his apartment to find it empty. Cleared out, as if he'd never existed at all. "He's not dead," I heard myself saying. "He just left. He disappeared, but he's not. He's dead." And Lucas reached into his jacket. The movement made me flinch, but he only pulled out a phone. He swiped through it with quick, precise movements, then turned the screen toward me. The photograph showed Michael, older than in my locket, his face harder somehow, but unmistakably him. He wore a dark suit and stood next to a man who I now recognized as a younger version of the person sitting across from me. They were at some kind of formal event, both unsmiling, both radiating the same kind of controlled power. "This was taken 3 months before he died," Lucas said. "And this," he swiped again. Another photo appeared. This one of what looked like a funeral. Rows of people in black, a closed casket surrounded by elaborate flower arrangements. This was his funeral. 200 people attended. You weren't one of them. The diner spun slightly. I gripped the edge of the table, my fingernails digging into the laminate. "That's impossible. He was a student. He was studying architecture. He was..." He was a member of my organization. Lucas put the phone away. He worked for the family business. He was never a student, Miss Collins. Hannah Collins. The answer came automatically. Miss Collins. He leaned forward slightly, and I became acutely aware that his two companions had repositioned themselves. One stood near the entrance now. The other had returned from the restroom and stood by the kitchen door, blocking exits. I'm going to need you to tell me everything about your relationship with Michael. How you met, how long you were together, what he told you about his life, his work, his family, everything. I don't understand. If he's really dead, if he's been dead for 2 years, then why does it matter? Because I've spent 2 years trying to understand every aspect of my brother's life before he died. Because he kept secrets that got him killed. And because you, his eyes dropped to the locket again. You're wearing his photograph around your neck like a talisman. That suggests you mattered to him. Which means I need to know who you are and why he never mentioned you. At the counter, Kayla had her phone out. She was probably calling someone, maybe the police, though I suspected they wouldn't help much against a man like Lucas Valentasi. I need to work, I said, trying to inject firmness into my voice. My shift doesn't end until 11. You can't just... Your shift is over. He raised his hand, and the companion by the door immediately walked to the counter, speaking quietly to Sarah. She nodded vigorously, her face pale. You're going to come with me to somewhere we can talk privately. You're going to answer my questions. And then, if I believe you, I might let you go home. And if I refuse? His expression didn't change, but something in his stillness became more pronounced, more dangerous. You won't refuse. It wasn't a threat, exactly. It was simply a statement of fact, delivered with the casual certainty of someone who'd never been denied anything in his life. Kayla appeared at the end of the booth, her face flushed. Hannah, you don't have to go anywhere. I called. It's fine, Kayla. I forced the words out. It's okay. I'll call you later. Hannah, please. I met her eyes, trying to convey both reassurance and desperate hope that she'd follow through on whatever call she'd been making. I'll be fine. She didn't look convinced, but one of Lucas's men, the one who'd been standing by the kitchen, moved toward her with deliberate intent. She backed away, her hands raised. Lucas stood, buttoning his suit jacket in one fluid motion. He picked up my locket from the table, holding it out toward me. When I reached for it, his fingers closed around mine, trapping them around the silver oval. Don't run, he said softly. Don't scream. Don't make this difficult. Do you understand? I nodded, not trusting my voice. Good. He released my hand, and I fumbled the locket back around my neck with shaking fingers. Let's go. The walk to the door felt endless. I could feel every eye in the diner following us. The elderly couple, the lone man at table 12, Sarah behind the hostess stand, and Kayla, who looked like she was torn between running after me and calling for help. The November air outside hit my face like a slap after the overheated interior of the diner. November in Chicago could be brutal, and tonight carried the metallic scent of approaching rain. A black SUV waited at the curb, its engine running. Lucas opened the rear door and gestured for me to enter. I hesitated, every instinct screaming at me to run, but his men were right behind us, and something in Lucas's eyes told me that running would be both futile and potentially dangerous. I climbed into the vehicle. Lucas slid in beside me, maintaining a careful distance but close enough that I could smell his cologne, something expensive and woody with notes of cedar. The door closed with an expensive, final-sounding thud. As we pulled away from the curb, I watched through the tinted windows as Kayla ran out onto the sidewalk, her phone pressed to her ear. Then the rain started, sudden and heavy, and within seconds she was just a blur of motion, swallowed by the downpour in the distance. Lucas said nothing during the drive, his attention fixed on his phone. I tried to note landmarks, to memorize the route we were taking, but the rain and the tinted windows made everything outside a shapeless, dark mass punctuated by streetlights. We drove for perhaps 15 minutes before pulling into an underground parking garage. The SUV descended 3 levels before stopping in a private bay marked with a placard that read, "Reserved, Valentasi. This way," Lucas said, climbing out and waiting for me to follow. He led me to a private elevator, one that required a key card to access. The doors opened immediately, revealing an interior paneled in dark wood and brass. As we ascended, I caught my reflection in the polished surface. Pale face, wide eyes, damp hair where the rain had caught me during the seconds between the diner door and the vehicle. I looked terrified. I was terrified. The elevator opened into a hallway carpeted in deep burgundy. Lucas walked ahead, his stride confident, and stopped at a heavy wooden door at the end. Another key card, another immediate response to his access. The space beyond was an office, but nothing like any office I'd ever seen. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked downtown Chicago, the lights of the buildings creating a glittering cityscape beyond the rain-streaked glass. The furniture was sleek and dark, the lighting subtle and carefully placed. It was the office of someone who valued both power and privacy. Lucas closed the door behind us, and I heard the distinct click of a lock engaging. "Sit," he said, gesturing toward a leather chair positioned in front of a massive desk, "and start talking." The leather chair was cold against my back, but I barely registered it. My entire focus was on the man settling behind the massive desk across from me, his movements precise and controlled. Lucas Valentasi didn't rush. He removed his suit jacket, hanging it on a wooden stand near the window, then rolled up his sleeves with deliberate care. The gesture revealed forearms corded with muscle, and a watch that probably cost more than everything I owned. "Start from the beginning," he said, his voice calm but leaving no room for negotiation. "How did you meet my brother?" My throat felt tight. "At Boston University. I was 25, finishing my degree in graphic design. He was in the coffee shop where I studied every Tuesday and Thursday afternoon. We kept running into each other. He said he was studying architecture. When was this? 4 years ago. October. The memory felt surreal now, colored by everything I'd just learned. He spilled coffee on my laptop, apologized for 20 minutes straight, insisted on buying me dinner to make up for it. Lucas's expression didn't change, but he pulled a leather notebook from his desk drawer and began writing. "And you believed he was a student. Why wouldn't I? He had textbooks. He complained about professors. He showed me his projects, building designs, structural analyses." My hands clenched in my lap. It all seemed real. It was real. Lucas looked up from his notes. Michael did study architecture. For 3 months, his first semester at Boston University. Then our father had a heart attack, and Michael came back to Chicago to help with the family business. But he kept the apartment in Boston, used it as a cover. He even audited a night studio once a semester to keep the lie breathing, bringing home graded sketches he never filed. The words landed like blows. A cover for what? For the life he actually lived. The one you knew nothing about. I wanted to argue, to defend the relationship I'd thought we had. But the evidence against me was overwhelming. 2 years of believing Michael had simply abandoned me, and now learning he'd been dead the entire time. The grief that washed through me was complicated, tangled with anger and humiliation. "Tell me about your relationship. How often did you see him?" 2 or 3 times a week usually. He'd come to Boston, or sometimes I'd visit him. We'd go to restaurants, museums, normal places. He was always careful about pictures, though. Said he was private, didn't like social media, because he couldn't risk you discovering who he really was. Lucas set down his pen. "Did he ever talk about his family? About Chicago?" "Sometimes. He mentioned an older brother who worked in real estate. Said you were close, but that you had very different approaches to life." I swallowed hard. "He made you sound boring, actually, like some corporate drone." Something that might have been amusement flickered across Lucas's face. "Corporate drone. That's creative." He leaned back in his chair. "What else did he tell you about me? That you were overprotective. That you worried too much. That he wished you could just let him live his own life." The irony of those words hit me hard now. He said he'd introduce us someday after he graduated. After he graduated from a university he hadn't attended in 3 years. Lucas's tone was flat. "Did he ever give you anything? Gifts, jewelry, anything unusual?" "The locket. That's it. He said it was a picture of him when he was younger, before life got complicated. I touched it through my shirt. I wore it every day after he disappeared. It was all I had left." "Show me." With trembling fingers, I pulled out the locket and opened it. Lucas came around the desk, studying the photo with an expression I couldn't read. Up close, he smelled like expensive cologne and something sharper. Coffee, maybe. Or the leather of his office. This was taken 6 months before he died. He was 28. Lucas touched the edge of the photo with one finger, the gesture surprisingly gentle. He gave this to you when? 3 months before he left. He said he wanted me to remember him the way he really was, not the stressed version I usually saw. My voice cracked. I thought it was romantic. Now I realize he was preparing me for something. Lucas straightened, moving back behind his desk. He knew the life he was living was dangerous. Giving you that photo, keeping you separate from his real world. He was trying to protect you. By lying to me for 2 years? Yes. No apology in his tone. Just statement of fact. Michael made a lot of mistakes. But keeping you ignorant of what he did was probably the smartest choice he made. The moment you knew, you became a liability. A target. The word target made my stomach clench. I still don't understand why he died. You said it was an ambush. Ambush by who? The Albanian Mafia. They've been at war with my family for years over territory in Chicago. Lucas pulled out his phone, swiped through it, then turned it toward me again. This image showed Michael in what looked like a security camera still, wearing tactical gear, a gun visible at his hip. This was taken the night he died. He was investigating a warehouse we suspected the Albanians were using for weapons storage. I stared at the image, trying to reconcile this armed, dangerous-looking man with the Michael who'd made me laugh over terrible comedy movies and cooked me breakfast on Sunday mornings. He went alone, against direct orders. Lucas put the phone away. He wanted to prove himself, to show he could handle important operations without supervision. Instead, they were waiting for him. 5 men. He killed 2 before they got him. The clinical way he described it made my head spin. How can you talk about it like that? Like it's just a business transaction gone wrong? Because that's what it was. Lucas's voice hardened. Sentiment doesn't bring people back, Miss Collins. Cold analysis of mistakes does prevent future deaths. Michael died because he was impulsive, and because someone in our organization told the Albanians where he'd be. I've spent 2 years trying to identify that traitor. Traitor. Ambush. Killed. The language of violence had invaded my understanding of someone I'd thought I loved. I need to use the bathroom, I said abruptly. My stomach was churning, and I could taste bile at the back of my throat. Lucas studied me for a moment, then gestured toward a door on the left side of the office. Through there, I made it to the small, elegant bathroom, just in time to vomit into the toilet. Everything from dinner came up, along with what felt like 2 years of accumulated grief and confusion. When I was finally empty, I rinsed my mouth at the sink, avoiding my reflection in the mirror. I didn't want to see what I looked like right now. When I emerged, Lucas was pouring water into a glass from a bottle on his desk. He handed it to me without comment, and I accepted it, grateful, despite everything. Sit. I sat, sipping the water carefully. My hands had stopped shaking, replaced by a strange numbness that felt almost worse. I need to know everything Michael told you about his schedule, his routine, where he went, who he mentioned seeing, any names that came up. Why? He's dead. What difference does it make now? Because understanding his last months helps me understand who betrayed him, and because... Lucas paused, something shifting in his expression. Because you're the only person who knew a side of Michael that I never saw. My brother was reserved, guarded. He didn't let people close. But he let you close. That means something. The admission surprised me. For the first time since entering this office, Lucas seemed less like an interrogator and more like someone who'd lost somebody important. He talked about opening his own firm someday, I said quietly. Architecture, like he'd supposedly been studying. He had sketches, plans for a small practice focused on sustainable design. He showed me drawings of buildings he wanted to create. I paused. Were those real? Or was that another lie? They were real. Michael did love architecture. Before our father pulled him into the business, that's what he wanted to do with his life. Lucas's jaw tightened. I tried to tell him he didn't have to stay, that he could leave if he wanted, but he felt obligated, felt like he owed the family. And it killed him? Yes. We sat in silence for a moment. Through the windows behind Lucas, I could see the sky beginning to lighten. That pre-dawn gray that meant night was ending. I'd been here for hours. Did Michael ever mention travel plans? Places he needed to go? I tried to remember. He went to New York a few times, said he had family business there, and once he went to Miami for a week. He was vague about why. He was setting up new supply routes. At my confused look, Lucas clarified. The family business isn't just real estate, Miss Collins. We import goods, some legal, some not. You mean you're criminals? I mean, we operate in gray areas that people like you don't usually have to think about. He said it without shame or defensiveness. Michael was learning those operations. He was good at the logistics, terrible at the violence. But he still died violently. Yes, my head ached. My throat burned from vomiting. And I was sitting across from a man who'd just casually admitted to running some kind of criminal empire, discussing the death of his brother like it was a case study. I want to go home, I said. You can't. The words were delivered calmly, but they hit me like a slap. What? I can't let you go until I verify something. Lucas pulled out his phone again, typed rapidly. I need to check whether the Albanians had any surveillance on Michael during the time you were together. If they documented his relationship with you, then you're in danger. That's insane. It's been 2 years. Why would they care about me now? Because vengeance doesn't have an expiration date. And because if they know you existed, they might think you have information about Michael's operations. Information they could use against my family. But I don't know anything. They don't know that. He set his phone on the desk. Right now, you're a potential asset to them or a potential weapon against us. Either way, you're not safe walking around Chicago without protection. Fear spiked through my numbness. So what? You're keeping me prisoner? I'm keeping you alive. Lucas stood, moving to the window. The growing dawn light cast him in silhouette. You'll stay in a secure location while I investigate. A few days at most. If the Albanians don't have records of you, you can go back to your normal life. If they do, he paused. Then we'll need to discuss long-term arrangements. I have a job. A life. People who'll worry about me. Your friend Kayla, yes. I'll allow you to call her once you're settled. She can bring you clothes and anything else you need. He turned back to face me. But you'll do it from a secure line, and you won't tell her where you are. She'll call the police. Let her. The police won't interfere with family business. Not in my territory. He said it with absolute confidence, and I believed him. You need to understand something, Miss Collins. The world Michael lived in, the world I live in, doesn't follow the same rules as yours. If you're connected to us now, those rules apply to you too. I didn't ask for this connection. Neither did Michael. Neither did I. But here we are. Lucas returned to his desk, pulled a card from his drawer. This is the number for the apartment where you'll stay. It's secure, monitored. Nobody can get to you there. I'll have food delivered. Anything you need. But you don't leave without my permission. I took the card with numb fingers. And if I refuse, you won't. Not a threat. Just certainty. Because despite your anger, despite feeling betrayed, you're smart. You survived 2 years thinking Michael abandoned you. You rebuilt your life from nothing. That takes intelligence and strength. And intelligent, strong people know when they're out of their depth. He was right, and I hated him for it. Lucas pressed a button on his desk phone. Bring the car around. We're taking Miss Collins to the north location. A voice crackled back confirmation. One more thing, I said. Show me proof. Real proof that Michael is dead. Without hesitation, Lucas opened a drawer and withdrew a folder. He slid it across the desk to me. This is his death certificate. This is the police report from the scene. These are photos from his funeral. I opened the folder with shaking hands. The death certificate was official, embossed with seals, dated exactly 2 years ago, to the day Michael had stopped answering my calls. The police report listed cause of death as multiple gunshot wounds. And the photos. Rows of people in black. A casket surrounded by flowers. A gravestone with Michael Valentasi carved into marble. Can I keep one? My voice cracked. A photo from the funeral? Lucas reached into the folder and pulled out a picture of the gravestone. Take this. You deserve to know where he's buried. It's in Oakwood Cemetery, Section 12. I clutched the photo. This tangible proof that Michael was really gone. The grief that crashed over me felt different now. Not the confused, angry sadness of abandonment, but the clean, sharp pain of permanent loss. I loved him, I whispered. Even now, knowing he lied, I still loved who I thought he was. He loved you too. Lucas's voice was gentler than I'd heard it all night. He told me once, near the end. Said he'd met someone who made him want to be better than what our family made him. He didn't tell me your name, didn't give me details, but I remember how he looked when he said it. Hopeful, like he actually believed he could leave all this behind. Lucas paused. He was wrong, obviously, but for a while, you gave him hope. That's worth something. A knock at the door interrupted whatever I might have said in response. One of Lucas's men entered. "Car's ready, sir." "Thank you." Lucas pulled his jacket back on, smoothed down his sleeves. He looked at me, his expression unreadable. "I know this isn't what you wanted tonight, Miss Collins, but you're safer with me than out there on your own. Trust that, if you can't trust anything else." I stood on unsteady legs, still clutching the photo of Michael's grave. "Will you tell me what you find? About whether I'm in danger?" "Yes." No hesitation. "I don't lie to people under my protection. You'll know everything I know as soon as I know it." It wasn't much, but it was something to hold on to as I followed him out of the office, into the elevator, down to the underground parking where another black SUV waited. The same driver from before opened the door, his face professionally blank. This time when I climbed into the vehicle, Lucas didn't join me. He leaned against the doorframe, meeting my eyes one last time. "Get some rest. Someone will bring you breakfast in a few hours. And Miss Collins? I am sorry. About Michael, about dragging you into this. I'm sorry." Then he closed the door, and the SUV pulled away, carrying me toward whatever secure location he'd arranged. Through the tinted windows, I watched the city transform in the early morning light. Familiar streets taking on unfamiliar shadows. The Chicago I thought I knew revealing itself as something more dangerous than I'd ever imagined. I pressed the photo of Michael's grave against my chest, and finally allowed myself to cry. 2 days in the penthouse felt like 2 weeks. The space was beautiful in that sterile, expensive way that reminded you constantly you didn't belong there. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Lake Michigan, the water gray and restless under November skies. The furniture was all clean lines and neutral colors, nothing personal anywhere except the clothes Kayla had brought on that first day. I'd called her within an hour of arriving, using the phone Lucas's people had given me. The conversation had been awkward, monitored, with me trying to reassure her I was safe, while she alternated between relief and fury. "You can't just disappear with some crime boss, Hannah. This is insane. I know. But I don't have a choice right now. There's always a choice. Not when the alternative is dying, apparently." She'd gone quiet at that, the weight of my situation finally sinking in. Now she called me twice a day, morning and evening. Our conversations carefully neutral because we both knew someone was listening. I spent those 2 days trying to reconcile everything I'd learned about Michael. The man I'd loved had never existed. Not really. He'd been a carefully constructed fiction designed to keep me safe and ignorant. I should have been grateful for that protection. Instead, I felt cheated, robbed of the chance to know who he really was. The penthouse had a well-stocked kitchen, a library full of books I couldn't focus on, and a bedroom with sheets that probably cost more than my monthly rent at the apartment I'd left behind. There was also a constant presence of security, men in dark clothes who rotated shifts, never speaking to me directly, but always watching. On the afternoon of the second day, Lucas arrived. I heard the elevator before I saw him, the distinct mechanical hum followed by doors sliding open. He stepped into the penthouse wearing another perfectly tailored suit, this one charcoal with a burgundy tie. His expression was grimmer than I'd seen it during our night-long interrogation. "Miss Collins," he set a leather briefcase on the dining table. "We need to talk." My stomach dropped. That doesn't sound good. It isn't. He gestured toward the sofa. "Please, sit down." I perched on the edge of the cushion, my hands twisting together in my lap. Lucas remained standing, his posture rigid. "I've spent the past 2 days investigating whether the Albanians had any surveillance on Michael during the time you were together. I needed to know if they were aware of your existence." He paused, jaw tightening. "The answer is complicated." "Complicated how?" They had a file on Michael. Nothing extensive, just basic intelligence gathering on a rival organization's operative. That file included mentions of a girlfriend in Boston, though no name, no photos, nothing concrete. After Michael died, they assumed the connection died with him. Relief started to bloom in my chest, but Lucas's expression killed it before it could fully form. However, he continued, my investigation created a problem. My men made inquiries. They asked questions in places where the wrong people were listening. Word got back to the Albanian information network that I was actively searching for details about Michael's personal life. And that made them curious. More than curious. It told them there was something worth finding. Lucas moved to the window, hands clasped behind his back. They started their own investigation. And because you've been working at the same restaurant for 2 years, living at the same address, using your real name, they found you in less than 48 hours. The room tilted slightly. I gripped the arm of the sofa. Found me how? They have informants throughout the city. Restaurant workers, delivery drivers, people who see everything and report back for a price. Once they knew to look for a connection between Michael and Boston, it was simple enough to track down someone matching the profile. So they know about me now. Because of your investigation. Yes. He turned to face me. And for the first time since I'd met him, Lucas looked almost guilty. This is my fault. I should have been more careful, more discreet. Instead, I put you directly in their line of sight. I stood up, needing to move. Okay. So they know I exist. That doesn't mean they'll do anything about it, right? I don't know anything useful. I'm not a threat to them. You're leverage. Lucas pulled his phone from his pocket, swiped through it. We intercepted communications between the Albanian cell operating in Chicago and their leadership in New York. They're planning to use you as a bargaining chip in ongoing territory negotiations. He held out the phone. The screen showed what looked like a transcript of a text conversation. Names redacted, but the content clear enough. Target confirmed. Valentasi's brother's girlfriend. Lives alone. Minimal security. Easy pickup. When? Tonight, likely. We intercepted this communication 6 hours ago and immediately moved to secure your apartment building. My men stopped 3 Albanians in the parking garage. They had zip ties, chloroform, and a van with the license plates removed. My legs gave out. I sat back down heavily, all the air rushing from my lungs. They were really going to kidnap me. They were. They would have held you somewhere secure, probably out of state, and used you to pressure me into giving up territory in Chicago. Docks, specifically. There's a shipping operation they've wanted access to for years. And if you didn't give them what they wanted, Lucas's silence was answer enough. Oh God. I pressed my hands to my face, trying to breathe through the panic rising in my throat. This can't be happening. This is insane. Welcome to the world Michael tried to keep you out of. Lucas pocketed his phone and moved to sit in the chair across from me. This isn't temporary anymore, Miss Collins. This is a real threat that won't disappear just because we want it to. But I don't know anything. I can't give them information about Michael or your family because I don't have any. They don't know that. And even if they did, you're still useful to them as leverage. Your existence, your connection to Michael, that makes you a weapon they can use against me. I looked up at him. This man I'd met 2 days ago who'd turned my life inside out. What do? You stay here. You follow the security protocols I'm going to outline. You don't go anywhere without armed escort. His voice was firm but not unkind. And you let me handle the Albanians. Handle them how? That's not something you need to worry about. It is if my life depends on it. I straightened, forcing strength into my voice despite the terror coursing through me. I deserve to know what you're planning. Lucas studied me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Fair enough. I'm working on identifying exactly which cell is targeting you and where their base of operations is located. Once I have that information, I'll take steps to neutralize the threat. Neutralize meaning kill. Possibly. Or intimidate them enough that pursuing you becomes more trouble than it's worth. Or negotiate with their leadership to make you off limits. He spread his hands. I have options, but all of them require time and careful planning. How much time? A few weeks, maybe a month. A month. 4 weeks of living in this beautiful cage, cut off from my life, dependent on a man I barely knew for survival. The reality of it settled over me like a weight. I need to call Kayla. She's already on her way. I asked her to bring more of your things from your apartment. Clothes, personal items, anything that will make you more comfortable here. You didn't ask me first. No, because you would have argued, and we don't have time for arguments. Lucas stood, moving toward a side table where a tablet sat charging. He brought it back, unlocking it with his thumbprint. This is a map of Albanian-controlled territories in Chicago. The red zones are confirmed operations. The orange are suspected. I looked at the screen, seeing a patchwork of colored areas spread across a digital map of the city. There were more red and orange zones than I would have imagined. They're everywhere. Not everywhere, but enough places that you can't just walk around freely without risk. He zoomed in on one section. This is where your apartment is located. See how it's right on the border of an orange zone? That's why they were able to move on you so quickly. You were practically in their backyard. I've been living there for 2 years. Why target me now? Because 2 years ago they didn't know you existed. Now they do. And in the world of organized crime, information like that is currency. Lucas set the tablet aside. I need you to understand something, Miss Collins. This isn't going to be resolved quickly or easily. The Albanians are patient, well-funded, and deeply invested in their vendetta against my family. Michael's death only intensified that. Discovering you gives them a new avenue for attack. So I'm trapped. You're protected. There's a difference. Is there? I heard the bitterness in my own voice. Because from where I'm sitting, it feels pretty similar to being a prisoner. You're alive. His tone hardened. That's the difference. Would you rather I'd left you in your apartment, ignorant of the threat, until 3 men with zip ties showed up at your door? He was right. And I hated it. No. Then accept the protection I'm offering. Follow the rules, and trust that I'm doing everything possible to end the situation as quickly as I can. The elevator chimed, and Lucas tensed slightly before relaxing when one of his men emerged, followed by Kayla. She was carrying 2 large duffel bags and looked simultaneously terrified and furious. Hannah! She dropped the bags and rushed to me, pulling me into a crushing hug. Oh my God, are you okay? Are you hurt? I'm fine. I'm okay. I hugged her back, breathing in the familiar scent of her perfume. I'm sorry I dragged you into this. You didn't drag me anywhere. That asshole did. She pulled back, shooting Lucas a glare that would have intimidated a lesser man. He didn't even blink. Miss Turner, thank you for bringing Hannah's things. Don't thank me. I didn't do it for you. Kayla turned back to me, lowering her voice though Lucas could obviously still hear. I brought your laptop, some books, all the comfort clothes I could find, and I grabbed those photos from your dresser. The ones of your parents. My throat tightened. My parents had died in a car accident when I was 19, leaving me with little family and even less money. The photos were all I had left of them. Thank you. I also called your landlord and told him you'd be away for a while. Paid next month's rent from your checking account. I hope that's okay. I used the emergency password you gave me. It's fine. It's perfect. I squeezed her hands. What did you tell the others at work? That you had a family emergency and had to leave town suddenly. Sarah asked if it had anything to do with that guy who came in the other night. Kayla's eyes flicked to Lucas. I told her I didn't know. Smart. Lucas stepped forward. Miss Turner, I need you to understand the seriousness of this situation. Hannah is in danger. Real, immediate danger. The less you know about where she is or why, the safer both of you will be. Is that a threat? It's a fact. If the wrong people think you have information, they'll come after you to get it. The best protection you have is genuine ignorance. Kayla's face paled, but she lifted her chin. Then I want you to promise me something. Promise me you'll keep her safe, that you won't let anything happen to her. I promise. No hesitation, no qualification, just flat certainty. She's under my protection now. That means she's as safe as I can make her. And if that's not safe enough, then I'll die keeping her alive. He said it like he was commenting on the weather, casual and absolute. Kayla studied him for a long moment, then nodded. Okay, I believe you. She turned back to me. I need to go. I told my mom I'd be gone an hour max, and I'm already pushing it. Call me tonight? Every night until you're home?" She hugged me again, whispering in my ear, "If you need me, really need me, find a way to let me know. I'll come. I don't care what he says." I nodded against her shoulder, not trusting myself to speak. When she pulled away, her eyes were bright with unshed tears. Lucas had his man escort her back to the elevator. As the doors closed on Kayla's worried face, I felt the weight of isolation settle over me again. "She cares about you very much," Lucas observed. "She's the only family I have left." I picked up one of the duffel bags, needing something to do with my hands. "She took me in when I first moved to Chicago. Let me stay on her couch until I found the apartment, got me the job at the diner. Then I'm glad she's in your life. Everyone needs someone who cares that much." I looked at him sharply, hearing something unexpected in his voice. "Did Michael have someone like that? Besides you?" "No. He kept people at arm's length. It was part of why he was so good at undercover work." Lucas moved toward the door. "I need to get back to my office. There's a meeting with my advisors about the Albanian situation in an hour. But I'll check in tomorrow." "Wait." I set down the bag. "Thank you. For stopping them. For protecting me. I know I've been angry and difficult, but I'm grateful. Really." Something in his expression softened fractionally. "You're Michael's legacy, Miss Collins. The last piece of him left in this world. Protecting you is the least I can do to honor his memory." He left before I could respond, the elevator carrying him away and leaving me alone with my thoughts and Kayla's carefully packed bags. I unpacked slowly, finding she'd included not just practical items, but comfort things too. My favorite blanket, the stuffed bear I'd had since childhood, a bag of the expensive tea I only bought when I felt like splurging. By the time I finished, the sun was setting over the lake, turning the water into molten gold. I stood at the window and thought about Michael, about the life he'd lived and the lies he'd told, about Lucas and his promise to keep me safe, about the Albanians somewhere in the city, planning and scheming and seeing me as nothing more than a tool to be used. 2 days ago, I'd been Hannah Collins, 27-year-old waitress with a quiet life and a past I was trying to forget. Now I was something else, a target, a complication, a problem to be solved. And somewhere in the transformation, I'd become dependent on a man as dangerous as the threats he was protecting me from. I touched the locket at my throat, feeling the familiar weight of Michael's photo against my skin. Whatever happened next, whatever Lucas's plan entailed, I would survive it. I'd survived losing my parents. I'd survived Michael's abandonment and the 2 years of grief that followed. I would survive this too. I had to. 7 days had passed since Lucas brought me to the penthouse. 7 days of staring at the same walls, reading books I couldn't concentrate on, and having stilted phone conversations with Kayla, where we both pretended everything was fine. The security detail changed shifts like clockwork. Silent men who nodded politely but never engaged. I felt like a specimen in a very expensive terrarium. On the 8th morning, Lucas arrived without warning. I heard the elevator and looked up from the window, where I'd been watching boats move across Lake Michigan, their white sails bright against the gray water. "Miss Collins." He stepped out carrying a wooden box about the size of a briefcase. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, and his usual precision seemed slightly frayed. "I apologize for not visiting sooner. There have been complications with the Albanian situation." Complications. My stomach tightened. Bad complications? Manageable ones. He set the box on the coffee table with careful deliberation. "But that's not why I'm here. I brought you something. Something I should have given you days ago." I approached slowly, eyeing the box. It was made of polished walnut with brass hinges, the kind of container designed to protect valuable things. This belonged to Michael. After he died, I gathered his personal effects and stored them. I haven't opened this box in 2 years. Lucas's voice was rough around the edges. "But you have more right to these things than I do. You loved him. He loved you. That matters." My hands trembled as I touched the lid. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure." He stepped back, giving me space. "Take your time. I'll be in the kitchen if you need anything." I waited until he'd left the room before lifting the lid. The hinges made a soft creaking sound, and then I was looking at pieces of a life I'd never fully known. On top lay photographs. So many photographs. Michael at various ages. Childhood shots where I could see the resemblance to Lucas in the shape of his jaw. Teenage years when he'd been gangly and uncertain. And then more recent images. But it was the ones underneath that stole my breath. Photos of us. Together. Michael and me at a coffee shop, my head thrown back in laughter at something he'd said. The two of us on Boston Common. Autumn leaves scattered around us. A candid shot of me reading while he watched with an expression so tender it made my chest ache. I'd never seen these pictures. Never known he'd taken them. He documented everything. I whispered to the empty room. Beneath the photos I found his watch. The silver Rolex he'd worn every day we were together. He'd claimed it was a graduation gift from a wealthy uncle. Now I knew it had probably cost more than I'd earned in a year. I lifted it, feeling the weight. And without thinking, I brought it to my face. It still smelled faintly like him. That particular combination of expensive cologne and something uniquely Michael. The sob came from nowhere, tearing out of my throat before I could stop it. Then another and another. Until I was crying so hard I couldn't breathe properly. 2 years of grief I'd been holding back. 2 years of thinking I'd been abandoned when really he'd been dead. 2 years of loving a ghost. I sank to the floor, photographs spilling around me, the watch clutched to my chest. I cried until my throat was raw and my eyes burned, until there was nothing left inside me but exhaustion and acceptance. That's how Lucas found me. I didn't hear him approach. One moment I was alone with my grief, and the next he was crouching beside me, his expression stripped of its usual careful control. "I'm sorry," I managed, my voice wrecked. "I'm getting tears all over your expensive carpet." "To hell with the carpet." He sat down properly, his back against the sofa, close enough that our shoulders nearly touched. "When my mother died, I didn't cry for 6 months. Everyone expected me to be strong, to lead the family through the transition. So I was. And then one day I found her recipe box in the kitchen, her handwriting on all those little cards, and I fell apart right there on the floor. My father found me an hour later, still sitting in the middle of broken glass from the cup I'd dropped. I looked at him through blurry eyes. What did he say? Nothing. He just sat down next to me and we stayed there until the sun set. Lucas picked up one of the photographs, the one of Michael and me laughing. "You were good for him. I can see it in these pictures. He looks happy. Really happy. I don't think I'd seen that expression on his face in years before he met you. He never told me about you. Not really. Just vague mentions of an older brother who worked too much." I wiped my face with my sleeve. "I thought you were some boring corporate executive." He made it sound like you two weren't close. We were very close. But Michael was also very good at compartmentalizing his life. The criminal side, the personal side, the side he showed you, he kept them all separate. Lucas set the photo down gently. "I warned him, you know. Told him it was dangerous to get involved with someone outside our world. That it would end badly one way or another. You were right. I wish I hadn't been." He was quiet for a moment. Then, Michael was impulsive. Always had been, even as a kid. He'd get an idea in his head and just go for it without thinking through the consequences. Our father used to say he had courage but no caution. That combination makes you either a hero or a corpse.